At a press conference held after the G20 meeting in Rome, President Biden stated that the American working class is being negatively impacted by OPEC Plus's failure to raise its output of crude oil. According to Russian TASS, Biden stated, "I do believe that the idea that Russia and Saudi Arabia and other major producers are not going to pump more oil so people can have gasoline to get to and from work, for example, is not right." The US president continued, as cited by NPR, OPEC Plus's decision to hold back on output increases has profound impact on working class families just to get back and forth to work. Later that day, US President Barack Obama's remarks were brutally repeated by Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, who accused the OPEC cartel directly of maintaining high prices. Naturally, the world oil market is the foundation for gas pricing. A cartel controls that oil market. OPEC is that cartel, Granholm said on NBC's Meet the Press. So that cartel has more say about what is going on. Granholm also pointed out that the oil industry was unable to flip a switch for output while it recovered from the pandemic's impacts, which added to the shortage that led to increased prices. The effects of price fluctuations are already losing Biden's support among voters, even if the factors affecting petrol prices at the pump in the United States may not even be domestic. NPR reports that he has a far worse approval rating than 50%, with 70% of Americans thinking the nation is not headed in the right way. The US president expressed confidence that the US could achieve his administration's emission reduction target of 50% from 2005 levels by 2030 during the press conference. The president did concede, though, that the switch to renewable energy would not happen quickly. Biden remarked, "On the surface, it seems like an irony," alluding to his demand that OPEC Plus increase oil output as he made his way to COP26 to talk about reducing global emissions. But the truth of the matter is, everyone knows that idea that we're going to be able to move to renewable energy overnight, it's just not rational. Reuters' John Kemp wrote this week that instead of increasing production to limit the upward potential of benchmarks, OPEC Plus is prepared to take a chance on prices rising and impacting demand. Kemp claims that OPEC Plus, like US shale oil drillers, prioritizes downside risks over upside risks when it comes to prices. In fact, earlier this week, Saudi Arabia's oil minister, Abdulaziz bin Salman, stated that OPEC Plus did not take anything for granted and was not in a haste to increase output in response to requests for more barrels. In independent remarks, his Nigerian colleague shared the same sentiment. Timmy Persilva stated in an interview with Bloomberg, "We have to look at the situation closely before we take action. It's still quite brittle. Before we make the next step, we must exercise extreme caution." Silva added, "We've seen the slowdown in China. More oil is being demanded by many, yet certain economies are having issues. We are aware that we haven't yet fully disclosed ourselves. Even if prices are high enough to make the majority of shale oil viable, US shale drillers are primarily concerned with satisfying their shareholders. The larger players in the shale pond are still exercising caution, even as smaller, private firms are increasing output." Remarkably, Amrita Sen of Energy Aspects said this week that increased oil prices should be welcomed as a means of facilitating the energy transition. Sen stated that higher prices are the most effective catalyst of changes in demand-side behavior in an opinion post for the Financial Times. Put another way, there was a greater chance that demand would begin to decline the longer fossil fuel prices remained high. Delegates from OPEC Plus told Bloomberg that the organization now projects the oil market to show a deficit of only 300,000 barrels per day, BPD, in the fourth quarter, as opposed to original projections of a 1.1 million BPD deficit. Following a review of the most recent statistics on worldwide oil demand, the Alliance's Joint Technical Committee, JTC, markedly reduced the forecasts of a market deficit at their meeting on Thursday, according to Bloomberg sources. The technical team meets in advance of each OPEC Plus ministerial conference and keeps an eye on the state of the market. Ministers are expected to convene in February to deliberate on the next steps towards reducing the collective production reduction. The reduced projected deficit would support the group's ongoing cautious approach to increasing market supply. OPEC Plus has been reducing its output since August by 400,000 barrels per day until November, in spite of requests from countries that use oil, such as the US, to increase supply and moderate the price spike. The reduction to the projected deficit would also support the stance of the world's largest exporter and top producer of OPEC, which is that market players need to look beyond this year's fourth quarter. In an interview with Bloomberg earlier this week, Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman advised OPEC Plus to proceed cautiously while adjusting oil supply in spite of rising prices. The Saudi minister pointed out that increased production is only acceptable in situations when there is a clear need for it, which he said was lacking at the moment because utilities were only relatively small-scale converting from gas or coal to oil. The energy minister added that even in the unlikely event that Iran or Venezuela decide to rejoin the global oil market, he still anticipated a major increase in the total oil supply of OPEC Plus by the end of next year. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, was asked if West Texas Intermediate, WTI, might go as high as $100 a barrel after it just surpassed $80. That is quite possible, he retorted. Considering how much money Russia depends on oil exports, it's likely that he was grinning when he stated that. WTI hasn't been above $100 since 2014. However, OPEC played a big role in both the first rise above $100 and the subsequent decline below $100 in oil prices. OPEC's reluctance to dramatically expand output in prior years was a major factor in the price of WTI initially surpassing $100 per barrel in 2008. By limiting its rise in oil production to 1.2 million barrels per day, BPD, between 2004 and 2007, OPEC reassured other nations that the markets would be sufficiently supplied. During those years, there was an approximate 3.2 million BPD growth in the world's oil demand. Those were years of flat non-OPEC output, which began to cast doubt on future oil supply. In the end, the peak oil panic contributed to the price of oil reaching about $150 per barrel in the summer of 2008. There were worries that there might not be enough oil for everyone. However, another process was going on at the same time that would eventually bring a sizable amount of fresh supplies to the market and compel OPEC to react. After a reversal in 2008, U.S. oil output increased over the following 6 years, bringing an additional 5 million barrels of oil production to the market. This posed a fresh danger to OPEC's market share from an unanticipated angle. Prior to the shale oil boom, the United States was a significant importer of oil and had seen a consistent drop in oil production since 1970. OPEC first attempted to contain this threat by reducing its own output in an effort to maintain market equilibrium and keep oil prices above $100. However, American output continued to rise, until in 2014 the dam finally broke. After the price of oil fell below $100, OPEC started a pricing war to reclaim market dominance. The company quickly increased output, which caused the price of oil to plummet. WTI's price was halved between the summer of 2014 and January 2015. After a year, it would fall below $30, and some analysts predicted that oil would never reach $100 again. It is a foolish game to try to predict oil prices since it involves trying to predict what OPEC will do. Although they suffered greatly during the price war, the U.S. shale oil sector was not destroyed. Although U.S. oil production did decrease in 2016, it began to increase again in 2017 as oil prices rose. Once more, OPEC turned to their production-cutting method of market balancing, which was gradually raising oil prices until the COVID-19 pandemic destroyed global oil demand. Then, the pandemic interrupted some manufacturing, which is still not back up, especially in the U.S. As in 2007, supply and demand for oil have tightened dramatically now that demand has recovered to levels almost identical to those before the COVID pandemic. The U.S. rig count is increasing in response to rising oil prices, as I mentioned in the previous video, but it will take some time for this to translate into increased oil output. In the meantime, the cost of oil is rising. How far will it rise? That will rely on what OPEC decides to do over the coming months. And that's it. If you want to continue to learn about business investing and financial education, we have got this video waiting on the screen for you to check out. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.